Welcome to my wire wrap bead bangle tutorial. This is a fun one to do with similar sized beads. I'm using very small microfaceted gemstones. They're fluorite and they come from Charmers Gems. So you can get a wide range of beautiful microfaceted gemstones there on that site. Otherwise, you can scale it up with crystal beads or glass beads, anything of your choice. They can be up to 8-10 mil, make it a really chunky bangle, but I'm going to be using these small ones just to show you how you can sort of make something quite dainty and delicate. So I'm using 0.6 mil wire for this because the chunkier wires tend, for something so small anyway, tend to be more difficult to manipulate. But if you're using bigger beads than my 3 mil beads, then I would say go for 0.8 for the framing or the wrapping. So depending on the size beads, use just chunkier gauge wire. So we're going to get started. So we'll need the 0.6. This is one actually done with 20 gauge 0.8 with some little crystals, but we're going to be using smaller, as I said, so 0.6 mil. So here are these beautiful fluorite. They're multicolored and they're like little flat buttons really, so I'm going to use those and it'll just give a nice variation to the bangle and a bit of sparkle. So get your beads, tip them out, and you'll need to cut a long length. I would say about 20 inches or so, because you're going to double it. So it's one length doubled up, and a bangle, depending on your wrist, is usually 6.5 inches, could be 7. So cut about 22 inches. Find the center. Place your round nose pliers there at the center and then give a twist. So that is going to be the eye of the clasp on the bangle. So that circular end link will be at the center of your wire. Now hammer that because it's 0.6 mil and you want to flatten and work hard on it, make it a bit tougher. So it doesn't matter if it's a flat head like that. I didn't get it very circular, but actually it works fine for the end clasp. Now take another length of 0.6. Make this shorter, I would say about 8-9 inches. Just needs to be a bit longer than the actual bangle length. And then wrap it tightly to secure around the base of that link that you've just created. So just do a few little wraps, get your chain nose pliers, the tips of them, and just squeeze that round to make sure that there's no poking out ends and that the wire is sitting tight and it's not going to flip around. So yes, it's very sort of fiddly, but once you've got that on, you'll never have to adjust it again. So now you've got 3 wires at the top, and you're going to pull the one you've just wrapped into the middle. So that's the one that's going to thread the beads on, and the other 2 longer wires are these sort of like ones on the V-shaped ones. They're going to be the wrapping wires. So pick up one of your beads. So I'm obviously working with very small beads, these little lovely microfaceted fluorites. Just push it right to the very end and then take one of the wires, wrap it round one side and then wrap around so it comes out on the same side again. So it's just one wrap. And then take the other wire on the opposite side and do the same thing. So you want those wrapped wires to hug, really hug the side of the bead and frame it. So pick up your next bead and do exactly the same thing. So push it right up to the last bead, bring the wire around and then out to the side, and the opposite wire on the opposite side and out at right angles, again underneath that bead. You want to make sure there's no gaps. So every time you feed a bead on, push it really close and tightly up to the last one. And when you do your wraps, also grip it. You see my fingers are completely covering it because I want it to be nice and close. You might need your pliers like this just to squish it down a bit if the wire lifts up. But you carry on all the way along that central wire, making it as long a bangle as you want it to be. So you can see now I've got my length. So I've finished off one of my wrapping wires, and then I'm just finishing off the last one now, and you'll just wire wrap it and then cut the end off. So you don't want to make it too bulky. Now if you find you haven't made it long enough, you've still got wire projecting from the center. So I'm just going to use this little end here just to spiral, but you don't have to do that. You can actually cut it off. But you've still got wire projecting from the center. So you could carry on adding a few more beads on that stem if it needs to be longer, if you've misjudged your overall length. I'm just going to check mine. I've got very small, narrow wrists, so I know I'll fit it. But just say you've miscalculated, you can always add, a few more beads, 5 more beads, but I'm only going to add 1 because I know that I don't want it too long. I want it to fit well. So now I'm going to just do a wrap loop. So at the end, you just make a link and wrap the wire for a wrap loop right at the very, very end of your bracelet. I'm not making it a big loop because this one is going to have my clasp, and it's not the eye of the clasp, it's just going to hold my clasp. So just neaten up the wires, and now we've got that ready. I'm just going to shape it a bit. So always shape it smaller than it's going to end up being, because it will add a bit of spring. It'll always bounce back. And so go around the mandrel one way and then the other way, smaller than it should eventually be. And that will help it stay in place. So now I need to put a fastener. So I'm going to make a fisheye clasp. Obviously I can't make it an open bangle because it's 0.6mm wire and it'll just be too soft. So here we go. I've got a whole tutorial on making clasps. So all you do is you make a little end, and then you place your round nose pliers, the thickest part of your round nose pliers, next to that end and curl it round to create a hook, and cut that off from the spool. I'm leaving a longish tail because I want to link that on. Now before I link it on, I'm going to hammer, and that will work harden it, flatten it as well, as obviously, but it will mean it's nice and solid and won't misshape and open up. So it gives it that wearability. So now I'm going to make a little wrap loop along the clasp and hook it into the end loop of my bangle. So post that in, and then you're going to wire wrap it. And that means, because a bangle takes a lot of wear and tear, and so that's why I'm linking it in like this rather than a jump ring, which could open up. This means it's all sealed and closed, and with a lot of wear and tear, it won't come apart. So just work on that for a bit, make it nice and neat, make sure there's no scratchy ends, and that's it. And then just work out which sort of positioning you want it, so you can, twist the last link to get it to sit just as you want it. And there's your fastener. And if it's misshaped terribly while you've been making that, just put it back on your mandrel and just shape it back again, or a rolling pin, and it's ready to wear. So I hope you have fun with this particular project and use lots of different varied beads to make your own versions. Thank you for watching, and please do subscribe.